next storyline in Mark Waid's Flash run is Fish Story. Penciled by Michael Collins, inked by Roy Richardson, lettered by Ken Holzowinski, coloured by Matt Hollingsworth, and edited by Brian Augustin. While the cover teases Aquaman and Flash having a race, that isn't the story we'll be getting into today, so sorry to anyone who wanted to see that happen. At least the cover is up front about it, so it isn't completely a mislead. However, the story involves Aquaman getting his mind taken over by the villain Marine Marauder, who uses him to capture a boat filled with innocent civilians on it, which includes Wally and his somewhat girlfriend Linda Park. Here, Marauder is able to use Wally to find the lost crown of Enlil, a Babylonian artifact that can give the wearer complete control over the Seven Seas, but it's hidden in a cavern sealed underneath the island. While Wally is reluctant to do so, he knows he can't risk the survivors getting hurt and decides to help Aquaman. Once they do find the crown, grabbing it is no problem for Wally, and they quickly make their way back to Marauder with the crown in tow. But before either her or Wally can use it, Aquaman grabs the crown and is fully under the control of Enlil, who uses Aquaman's powers to make the entirety of humanity fall by commanding a tsunami to hit the island. Wally and Marauder decide to put aside their differences to work together. Marauder makes sure the survivors find safety in the cave, while Wally takes on Enlil by himself. While he does struggle against Enlil at first, Wally figures out that he's unable to hear Enlil's chants and realizes there's a possibility that Enlil can't hear Wally, so he knocks him down, returning Aquaman back to normal. However, the tsunami is still coming to envelop the island, so Wally takes Aquaman back to the cave, covers that same cave with boulders and waits for the tsunami to pass, which does catch a very greedy Marauder who thinks she's finally won the crown of Enlil. So thanks to the efforts of the Flash, the day is now saved, and he says goodbye to Aquaman. So that's pretty much the whole plot summarized, and I gotta say, I don't like it very much. Look, I don't think the concept is bad or anything. The Flash having to deal with some mind-controlled Aquaman to find an ancient artifact from a secret underwater palace has potential, but the execution is lackluster. Things are resolved a bit too quickly, which I know is funny with this whole comic series being about a guy who goes fast, but the story feels like it could have been 2 issues, as it's clear that Mark Waid has a good amount of ideas, but was rushed by the limited amount of pages he could use. For example, when the Flash and Aquaman reach the palace, there's water flooding in, and Flash grabs the chest with the crown in it, before he is able to get both himself and Aquaman out with no problems. It makes sense, but I feel there should be an extra struggle here. Like, what if the exit gets blocked off and Flash has to find another pass or phase through a wall to get out of it? It's the same with Flash taking down Enlil. He tries taking out Enlil by pushing him over while he can't hear anything else but his own chants, which just turns out to be the way to defeat Enlil. No real shock where Enlil can at least sense Wally behind him and knocks him over. That's just how it works. Also, the first page literally teases a confrontation between Flash and Aquaman, who comes in with a bunch of swordfish under his command. But when we see this same exact encounter when the flashback catches up, the swordfish actually help the Flash and they're able to make their way into the palace. I know it makes sense with all the context given to us, but it makes the tease feel like it was all for nothing. It especially sucks since Aquaman would be in his element during this fight, and it would be interesting to see how Flash would handle a situation like that. But the thing that annoys me the most is that Enlil is just able to control Aquaman this whole time, which is why Aquaman was under the Marauder's control with no questions asked. But by the end of the story, it seems like the reason Enlil had that control was also because of the crown, because when Aquaman puts it on, his suit changes from light colors to dark ones, insinuating that Enlil has took over his consciousness, and when Wally pushes him over, the crown falls off Aquaman's head and it's completely back to normal. So, obviously I'm confused here. Did Enlil just possess Aquaman by himself, or was it because Aquaman put on his crown? I'm sorry, but it can't be both. I will admit, however, that seeing Aquaman in darker colours was pretty cool. I do, however, have more positive things to say about Marine Marauder, because she's a very smart villain who's able to use the civilians' lives against Wally to get him to do her dirty work in finding the crown. She's also very greedy, as when the tsunami approaches and Enlil's crown has fallen, she grabs the crown and doesn't care that she's about to be killed. She just wanted a trophy, and now she's got it, but that becomes her downfall as the tsunami eats her up like it's nothing. The epilogue does tease a possible return though. Now that I've talked about the villains, it's time to talk about the heroes, starting with Wally West, who is his usual self, putting aside the differences between Marauder to save the civilians, using his super speed to his advantage when he finds the crown. Once Enlil has revealed himself, he uses his smarts to take him down and chooses to save his friend Aquaman when given the choice between him and Marauder, who isn't complying. I also really liked this scene at the start where he helps Linda with tennis, which then spirals into Wally using his super speed to just play a game with himself. And once the crowd goes wild, he embraces their applause. But Linda is upset since she didn't actually get to play the game. This was a pretty funny scene to me. Speaking of Linda, she doesn't do much, but I like her too. For anyone who isn't aware of who Linda is, she is a love interest for Wally, who first appeared in Flash Volume 2, issue 28, which is a story for later. While she is upset at Wally's antics during the tennis game, she does care for him and helps him out during the issue, as she hands him his Flash costume, which she saved for him just in case. Last but not least, there's Aquaman, who also doesn't do much, at least when he's not under Enlil's control. We don't really see his encounter with Enlil or anything to intrigue the reader. We just skip to Aquaman being possessed for 20 pages until Wally snaps him out of Enlil's control. Mark Waid is telling a story about Aquaman being mind-controlled, so I'm not too fussed about the lack of him in this issue. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Fish Story. It's not bad, just very mediocre for a Flash and Aquaman team-up. The story felt very rushed, the main villain is very one-note and forgettable, and the stakes don't feel as urgent as they should be. Characters like Wally, Linda, and Aquaman aren't character assassinated, which is nice, but they aren't enough to make me think of this book super fondly. So as much as I hate to say it, Fish Story is very mid, and I recommend people skip it while reading The Flash. So hopefully, Mark Waid's Flash run can pick itself back up from here. But that's the end of the video, which I really liked making, so I'm hoping to keep talking about Flash comics and just other comic books in general going forward. So if you want that as well, I highly recommend subscribing, hitting the notification button, and sharing this video around so that more people can recognize my analytical talents when it comes to comic books. Anyway, I'm Jedi-Liam 64, and I think I've taken up enough of your time, so I'll see you all later.